The Reappearing Letter. John had always considered himself a rational man, a man of logic and order. He didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. But when his wife, Maria, passed away suddenly from a tragic accident, his world turned upside down. The grief was unbearable, and he had spent weeks in a daze trying to hold on to the remnants of their life together. One stormy evening, as he sat in the study, surrounded by their memories, he noticed something odd on the desk. A letter, folded neatly, with his name written on it in Maria's handwriting. His heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen this letter before, and he was certain that he hadn't written it himself. Hesitant, he reached out and opened it. "John, I am sorry for leaving you, but I need you to understand. I am trapped. You must save me. I am stuck in a place between worlds, somewhere far from where you can reach me. Please come for me before it is too late. Only you can bring me back. You know where to find me. The letter will return when the time is right." The words seemed impossibly familiar. He remembered Maria often speaking of strange dreams, dreams of places she couldn't understand. She had always believed that death was not the end, but she never shared the full extent of her thoughts with him. She had said things like, "The veil between worlds is thinner than we think." But this letter, it couldn't be real. He was losing his mind. Yet, in the back of his mind, something told him to believe. He placed the letter on the table and tried to go to sleep, but his mind raced with questions. Had Maria left this behind before her death? Or was there something more to it? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. He stood up quickly and opened it, but no one was there. There was nothing but the howling wind outside. He shut the door and returned to the letter. But when he reached for it, it was gone. He frantically searched the room, overturning papers and looking under the furniture. It was nowhere to be found. A chill ran down his spine. The next morning, John tried to convince himself that it was all a figment of his imagination. But when he opened the drawer where he had stored the letter, there it was again, waiting for him, folded perfectly, as if it had never been moved. The handwriting was unmistakably Maria's. "John, I know you don't understand, but the letter must be read at the right moment. You must act now. There's a place, a dark place. You know where. Go there, and you will find the answers. Hurry!" His heart pounded. This was not a trick of the mind. It was real. But what was this place she spoke of? He racked his brain, trying to recall anything Maria had said about it. Then, it hit him. They had once visited an old, abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Maria had spoken of the house in strange, cryptic ways, saying she felt a presence there. John had laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just her overactive imagination. But now, in the light of this strange letter, it seemed more significant. That night he set out for the house. The wind howled fiercely as he drove down the winding road, the eerie moonlight casting long shadows across the trees. When he finally arrived, the house loomed before him like a silent, waiting monster. It had been empty for years, but now it felt alive, as if it were waiting for him. He stepped out of the car and made his way toward the front door. His breath was visible in the cold air, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The door creaked open on its own as he approached, as though inviting him inside. Reluctantly, he stepped over the threshold. Inside, the house was just as he remembered, dark, cold, and abandoned. The air felt thick with dust and age. But there was something else, a sense of heaviness, a presence that he couldn't explain. He walked through the house, searching for any sign of Maria or the strange place she had written about. As he moved deeper into the house, he began to hear faint whispers. They were soft at first, just on the edge of hearing, but as he continued, the voices grew louder, almost pleading. Suddenly, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He spun around, but there was no one there. The whispers grew louder, and John's mind raced. He had to find the answers. He had to understand what was happening. He found himself in the basement, drawn to the corner where a dusty old chest sat. Something about it seemed to call to him. He knelt down, his hands trembling as he opened the chest. Inside, he found old photographs, trinkets, and a journal. The journal was Maria's. His fingers shook as he opened it. The pages were filled with strange, cryptic writing, some of it in languages he couldn't understand. But in the back of the journal, he found a passage that sent chills down his spine. I am no longer myself. I have crossed into a place beyond life. The things I've seen, they haunt me. They are watching me. And soon they will come for you. The letter will return when it's too late. John dropped the journal in horror. He realized then that Maria hadn't been trying to reach out to him from beyond the grave. She had been warning him. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just about her. It was about something darker, something that had crossed over with her. As he turned to leave, the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. The air grew colder, and the whispers became deafening. Shadows moved along the walls, and John could see figures watching him from the corners of the room. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and he could hear them growling as if they were hungry. In that moment, he knew that he was not alone. And worse, he understood that Maria hadn't been the one who needed saving. It was him. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a familiar voice calling his name. "John?" It was Maria's voice. "Maria?" he whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. He spun around, desperate to find her, and there she was, standing in the doorway, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes dark and hollow. She reached out to him, a twisted smile on her lips. "John, you came," she said, her voice now distant and cold. "But it's too late." John backed away, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The shadows closed in around him, and the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The last thing he saw was Maria's outstretched hand, her smile growing wider as the darkness consumed him. The letter had returned once more. The end.